We are live.
Okay. It is November 9th, 2023. The time is now 6:32 p.m. And this is a meeting of the Finance and Facilities Committee. We'll get started with introductions. First, we'll do people in the room, and then we'll do people online. So up here in the corner.
Luke Johnson.
Yes.
Hi, Dr. Iverson, Superintendent of Schools.
Lisa Raymond, Assistant Superintendent for Business.
Dennis Pugliese, Director of Facilities.
Chris Allen, Board Member. Amy Ashley, Board Treasurer.
David Warner, Board Member.
Steve Morton, one of Woodland.
Jessica Muldoon, parent of two.
Katie McGee, parent of one at Woodlands.
And now online. Well, Mr. Walter.
Walter Simon, community member of the planning board, but I am not acting in the capacity of the planning board.
Okay. Mike.
Mike Messina, BBS Architects.
Carol.
Carol Allen, community member.
Fred.
Fred Seba, BBS Architects.
Anyone I missed? Okay, very good. Welcome, everyone. Second item on our agenda. You may want to bring up the agenda.
Okay. Let me share the screen, 1 second.
Members of the public are welcome to attend all Finance and Facility Committee meetings. However, voting rights for recommendations for non-board members require annual committee membership reauthorization by board resolution. We did circulate an email earlier seeing who wanted to rejoin, and I announced at several meetings whether people wanted to have their voting rights renewed. And per the October 24th board resolution, the current non-Board of Education voting members are, and it's the list right in front of you, Dr. Carol Allen, Gabriela Barahona, Megan Hatt, Sarah Lazare, Linda Lee, Katie McGee, Steve Morton, Jessica Muldoon, and Walter Simon. We need to take a look now at the minutes for the October 5th meeting. If you have a hard copy packet, that's about 10 pages in. Basically, you have stapled together the agenda and the minutes. And then we can look at it online here. So the last Finance and Facilities Committee meeting was held on October 5th at 6:30 p.m. right here in the Innovation Lab. Attendees included David Warner, Lisa Raymond, Dennis Pugliese, Chris Vallon, Walter Simon, Katie McGee, Gabriela Barahona, Amy Ashley Moore, Tracy Mares, Steve Morton, Jessica Muldoon, Fred Seba, Carol Allen, Michael Messina, Elizabeth Sindona, and Luke Johnson. So let's take a look. We'll just scroll through this relatively quickly. At the time, that's earlier on in the process that we just went over as to who the members are. And that was part of the call for new members. We were upstream from the bonds, so we were looking at the what was in the phase 2 bond. And we went over numbers for that, what was had to be bonded, where some state aid came in, and what we had in reserves already. Scrolling through, and then we talked about our strategies to get out the bond vote, and then there were many strategies, and then we reviewed the facilities projects. We'll have an updated report like that from BBS Architects on all of our major projects. Let's go. And we talked about the security vestibule, which you may have noticed you couldn't go in the front door as we walked in. So that's finally happening. That's finally under construction. So we're getting there. And we went over each of the larger projects. We'll go over that again tonight. We talked about the grade level configuration strategy, and that we needed more data, and we asked for, I believe, enrollment numbers, and we have some of those tonight. Then we went school by school, And of course, the big thing last month was the flooding, all the record rainfalls, and what we did to take care of that. And we were happy to report that there was no permanent damage to anything, but we had some, I believe the ECP children had to be evacuated from a classroom, and so we worked on all that. We went over that, what our response was, and then talked a little bit about the bus garage, and then we went into the finance area with Lisa Raymond, the American Rescue Plan. We'll go over this in an updated fashion tonight. Facilities funds, we reviewed the Edgemont Incorporation issue. I believe there's been a meeting since then. Dr. Allen, a little later on, will you be able to update us on anything that's happened since last month?
Yes, I will.
Good. Okay, and that's pretty much what we went over.
I move that we approve the minutes as presented.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have minutes. Okay. All right, back to the agenda. I left in the phase 2 construction project information from last time, and scroll on to the next page. And so the new information is that on 10/17, the public voted to authorize a bond and capital reserve expenditures to finance this entire project. The yes votes were 661 and the no votes were 217. So we have a bond, we passed the bond. Thank you to all who worked diligently to inform the public regarding the phase 2 project. Dr. Iverson, thank you for going out and presenting to neighborhood associations. Lisa, Dennis, all of that front end work. It's not easy putting that together. Everybody who went out and informed the public of what was happening and what the need was. Thank you. Mr. Simon?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that a major milestone was passed when Dr. Irvinson came and made her presentation to High Point, which is pretty much in the past being pretty close. The presentation that she made was outstanding, and it was well received. It was informative, and now High Point is in a position to entertain future types of meeting of this type. Dr. Allen could fill you in about the next meeting, but I think seeing how this was something we've been trying to do for years to crack, I think we must keep the flow of information going to High Point, because they are significant, a group that can kill a bond when they don't have the proper information. So with proper information, you see, we wind up with a 3-to-1 plurality. So I think that was great, and I thank Dr. Alice Irvinson and the other members of the boards who were at the meeting.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Simon, so much. I was joined by Ms. Raymond and Dennis Pugliese. I just wanted to make a point, since you did mention that, keeping that conversation going. I've been in Linda Inuzu. She and I several times since the bond is passed, and we're working on me bringing us having more activities where we bring the seniors on campus here, and that we bring some of our students there to entertain the seniors. So
Excellent.
So we're working on a calendar of events. They've already asked me for tickets to the Spring Fest musical, and we'll make arrangements to get them there and have a senior section reserved for all who want to come. So I think to your point, we've opened the gate for that. What I will say, I was very excited to meet so many of the seniors who are educators and had worked in schools and really could connect to the work and the data that we presented, and was very excited. And many, when they came in to vote, made a point of coming over to say, I told you I would be here, and came in and voted. So I think that relationship is there. I really do love it. They were very daring, and I'm looking forward to just us continuing to get in front of them to share the good word about the district. I think we shattered some of those perceptions, and by just showing the great things our students are doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Right.
Okay, very good. The board will vote on authorizing the project at the 11/14 Board of Education work session. And once the project is authorized, BBS will work on submitting the project to New York State for approval. BBS estimates that construction, tell me if I say anything wrong here, estimates that construction should be completed in approximately 2 years, the summer of 2025, and recommends completing work at 2 schools per year. Do you want to go over that in a little more detail? Do you want to reiterate that a little bit? Mike or Fred?
Sure. Just real quick, we talked about doing Highview roof and Bailey's roof in the first wave of construction projects with the bond. That would also include the track and the tennis courts at Woodlands, because we want to lump those together with the roof project, so you get your aidable portion of those exterior site work projects. And then phase 2 of the construction would be the following year, the 2 roofs at Highview and Jackson.
High school, Woodlands.
Woodland.
High school would be the
High school
first
in
year or
Jackson.
the second year? 'Cause he said-
I'm sorry, Woodlands is the first year. My mistake.
Woodlands is the first year. Okay.
Yes, I'm sorry. I said Highview, didn't I? I meant to say Woodlands.
Yeah. So I thought, oh, I'm wrong. Good thing I
No,
asked you.
no, you're right.
So,
Part 1, part 2. Well, if we use phase, they'll become confused because phase 2 is
Yeah.
the big. Yeah, we'll find out.
Understood. Yeah, you'll see them in the reports that we give you on these monthly meetings for design purposes. For right now, I left the second part 2 projects off of the list, the 2 roofs at Jackson and the Highview, just to ease the confusion. But those designs will start at a later date next year, accordingly. So
quick question.
Yes, go ahead.
Quick question. So we group items together to potentially gain economies of scale.
Yep.
Right? Are we not grouping all of the roofs together because we anticipate that the companies that win the bid won't have enough staff to do all the projects simultaneously? Or what's the reasoning behind having 2 parts?
that's one of the concerns. You don't want to start ripping apart 4 buildings and have a contract to start to fail or not to perform as well as it should be, and have that exposure. The other is if you go out to bid and you start to see the bids come in higher than what we anticipated in the budgets, you can scale back some of the scope on the remaining projects to finish some of that work. If you put it all out at one time and you're over budget, now nothing happens, right? You don't do any work next year. So that's another reason why we don't want to lump everything together in one shot.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
Yeah, there's also the summer school programs and the camps. To have all the buildings at once, that'd be
No problem. There's no place to move people to. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. The other thing I just want to point out too is, the window that we're working in to try to get for next summer it's tight. We're in contact with the environmental company to start doing testing, within the next week or 2. The high school is a very large roof. There's probably 20 different roof areas in that building. So something to think about now, and we don't need to make a decision tonight, but if all that work at the high school roof can't get done over a summer period, let's say we don't get approval back from the state, we don't get a permit in early enough, that we don't give enough time in the summer months to get the roof done. If there's the okay by the board or whoever to do some of that roofing during school, during September, October, while the weather's still okay, or do we push out that roof that we don't do those different areas to the following year? Just something to think about. It's a realistic forecast, being that we don't have any control over the time that SED takes to review. Unfortunately, we just got a notice last week that SED extended their review period to now it's up to 16 to 18 weeks. So it went up more. Again, we just don't have control of that. So just something to think about, scheduling. We're shooting and targeting to get a lot of this work done over the summer, but things may lag into September, October. And just to start to think about, are you willing to do that kind of work? And Dennis and I have spoken about that already on some of these projects.
And by during the school year, we're talking about after hours during the school year. Once we get too late in the season, like after daylight savings, we run out of daylight, so it's not productive. But you might be able to start a little bit early or, finish a little bit late in September, definitely, by the beginning of October. So those are all options for us. We'll just see how SED does as far as approval.
Okay, we'll see what the actual performance is. Okay, so we kind of know where we're going. Can you anticipate about when you'll be able to be ready to submit to NYSED?
We're targeting for the end of this year, for sure, if not sooner. Again, a lot of this, we need to get some survey work done at the tennis courts and track. We need to do a lot of environmental testing, so that's going to take some time, but we have begun the documents as much as we can at this point.
Does end of this year mean end of 2023 or end of the school year?
2023, calendar year, end of December.
Thank you.
Calendar year. Okay. In terms of informing the public, does anybody want to make any comments as to what went well and what could have been done better?
With the vote?
Well, obviously there was an outcome and enough people showed up and seemed to be informed. I didn't get the huge number of complaints I normally get about people not being informed. So I think something must have worked. Maybe the newsletters and the postcards and the people at the farmers market.
I think it was a combination of everything.
Yeah.
A lot of communication went all around and hit people in every which way. So I think the communication needs to be continued.
Okay, and yeah.
And I would say there were a lot of parents, like at the 4 to 5 o'clock hour, I was out at the PTA table, and there were a lot of parents coming with their kids. Bailey had great turnout, and I think it was what the kids were voting on. And like some of the parents said, I came because my child wanted me to vote. I don't think we had the same level of turnout from ECP and LFJ parents. And again, those are parents who are potentially newer to the area. So while I think we potentially got more parent turnout than in the past, and I think there was a lot more communication with them, I think we can still do better with newer and younger families about what this all means. It's very complex. Living in this area, we all know the different levels of government. So figuring out how to break it down a little more and make it like, this is why you care, and like find out about the information earlier on.
I agree, and I'd also say the next one, I think, we said you went to a couple homeowner associations. I think we need to like make more inroads, and if they're not responsive, knock on the door or call a couple more times. Maybe if that's not successful, maybe go back to maybe hosting like cottage meetings, or with a neighbor in a particular neighborhood will host a meeting and invite the neighbors over. Just kind of more grassroots. I'd also like to just say thank you. The teachers union was very helpful in spreading the word on that. So it was great to have their backing and helping have their help publicize the bond, and also of course the reminder calls that went out from Mr. Latimer's office. That was helpful. So, and I think it was the PTA or somebody that ran into him and started that conversation going, and then Dr. Iverson closed that up. So I think that was helpful.
Okay, anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, I definitely think it was a lot of things coming together, but also I feel like it was a smart bond. Like it's hard to argue with roofs. And then, we kind of threw in those other sports, the athletic stuff. But that wasn't much of the bond. So I felt like people really responded to like, oh, of course we need new roofs. And we should just keep that in mind moving forward to definitely, work with the most essential first, and then maybe add a couple sweeteners like the athletic stuff.
I would just like to add that we did what the public asked us to do, because when the large barn failed, they say, well, why don't you get a series of smaller barns? And then depending upon how that come out, maybe you float a bond between 10 and $15 million. That's exactly what we did. We had a series of small bonds. We demonstrated that we can manage the money well. We got good projects, and then we went for a bond for 13 million. It was exactly, so the whole idea, we did exactly what the public complained about when they voted down the big bond. So that's, again, that gave us credibility.
Good. Katie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, just in what can be improved, I think always the, making sure our lists are up to date, the mailing lists and things. I know there's always somebody who says they didn't get it, but sometimes it's, and also like having a good relationship with the post office and double checking that their mail carriers are distributing where they're supposed to.
May I make a comment, please? I can't figure out how to raise my hand.
Dr. Allen?
Yes, thank you. I think we should start now planning to ask for another very small bond next May when we have our annual budget vote, so that the size of the increase will be minimal, so that resistance to it will be minimal. Okay. Rather than perhaps waiting until next December to have a special election and asking for twice as much. We know we have projects that need to be financed, so we should start planning now to ask for that money at the budget vote in May.
And once we get through the status of everything, that's probably what we're going to talk about tonight on where we go from here. And that will be, yeah, towards the end of the agenda. Okay, so let's plow boldly ahead and try and get to that point where we can make that, we can talk about those decisions. Okay, so let's go over facilities projects. And first, BBS has a facilities projects report. Could you bring that up?
Hold on a minute. Hold on a second. Up the share.
Re-engage.
Which one is it?
Right there, no, go back, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right there, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the big one.
No,
That's next. That's a little later.
It's towards the bottom row, project status, PDF on the bottom
all the
row.
way to the.
There you
To
go.
the right there.
All right.
Okay. Good job.
We got there. Hold on.
Okay, Mr. C, Messina, Fred Seba, Dennis.
Okay. So the first item on here is something that I added to our list, and I've had preliminary discussions with Ms. Raymond about putting out an RFP for construction management services. We are in the process of drafting something up for the district to take a look at and review. There are some firms that are in the area in Westchester County that we've worked with in the past successfully. And we have budgeted these services in the bond for the roofs and any projects going forward as well. So there is money there to encumber for this service. So I just wanted to add that to the list. We can give you updates as we go along. But ideally, we'd like to get an RFP out sometime next month for review and interviews, probably happening in January. I would think that would be the timeline for that. Just because you're going to have so much work going on, we do periodic inspections. but we're not there every day for coordination and boots on the ground and day-to-day supervision. And the amount of work that you're going to have going on at all these buildings is significant that you would probably want somebody out there full-time in that role over the summer months, 4 or 5 months out of the year when construction's happening. So that's the first item. Woodlands security vestibule, yay, we've started construction. We broke ground. They're actually scheduled to pour some concrete footings and foundation walls tomorrow. We are working hand in hand with the surety company to make sure that everything's done correctly and the money flows the way it should. So that project is underway. The schedule is a little unrealistic in my eyes. It's just trying to get it done before the end of the year, hopefully, but we'll see how they do. I think it might take a little bit longer than that, but that's the schedule so far, is to have everything done by the end of December. Administration building, the new skylights were delivered on 10/6. The frame has been installed as of last week. He's got glass to still install on the large skylight. If you've gone there or seen pictures, it looks dramatically different than it did previously. The smaller skylight still needs to be installed. He's got some gutter work to do. Unfortunately, there was a theft at the site where the material was stolen. The contractor is replacing those materials that were taken. So he still has some gutter work to do, some leaders, downspouts, and all the roof edge metal still needs to be fabricated and installed to date. So there's still some work to be done out there, but he's moving along nicely.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Someone else asked, so I'm gonna repeat the question. And the materials that we're still on, I understand it's under their responsibilities. We're not paying anything extra for it, but like material is being replaced with like, right? The same?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And how is it gonna be prevented from being stolen again?
Good question. The contractors are responsible to secure their own products and materials. Unfortunately, I don't know how he secured it previously, but there isn't a lot left to be done. So that's the good news. I'm sure he's going to bring it on site as he needs it, hopefully. But I don't recall if there was a storage container or if he was bringing things into the building where he could provide it to store it. So.
Typically, if the contractor, it's his responsibility anyway, but they normally either will bring a storage container that's locked and put that on the job site to secure their materials, or they'll just bring their materials to the job site, whatever they need that day. So again, it's the contractor's responsibility, and he is replacing those materials at his own cost, but unfortunately it happened.
Well, at RJ Bailey, we had a large container on the north end of the building, right, to take care of all the components that had to go inside. So
different contractors secure their
right.
different. Right.
Yeah, this is an odd theft in my eyes. I mean, this is large sections of gutters. It wasn't small pieces. So it was a little surprising to hear that it got taken. But all right. Any other questions? We'll move on. Okay. So the phase 1 capital projects at Highview and Jackson, Bailey, Woodlands, or ECP, all that is pretty much substantially complete. There's some punch list work still ongoing this month and probably into next month as well. But the majority of the work there has been completed. Bailey Elementary, the auditorium renovations, we received the permit. We're just waiting to bid that auditorium as part of the roof replacement projects. So we have that group together. Again, we don't want to do the auditorium interior work prior to the roof being tightened up and replaced. So we're just holding on to that for now. Woodlands tennis courts, LOI has been written, so the letter of intent has been sent out to the state. The budget of $500,000 was approved in October. Survey has been ordered. It's with Ms. Raymond now to accept and approve. and then we'll continue the design on that. Running track is in the same vein as the tennis courts.
Wait, before we go on, was there an attempt to get additional funding to the U.S. Tennis Association?
Yes, we're currently working on the grant process.
Okay, so with Tokarski?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, keep going.
But
Okay.
please don't keep going. I wanted to stop you to ask a question about that. Thank you for bringing that up, Trustee Warner. So with regard to the tennis courts and going through the process, you're saying that the teacher is involved? It's not, who exactly on our side in the district is the contact person? Because we have a parent that reached out with the information and has been asking for follow-up, and we need to know who at GCSD is managing that so that that parent can follow up with the person and get that information.
So Gabriella Barahona made the initial contact, then we brought people in and we had a conference, and then we decided that Dennis Pugliese would be the contact person. But Dennis needs information beyond what he knows in order to make sure everything is the way it is. So we kind of work together as a team, I think. Well, Dennis,
with the tennis coach, and with the athletic director also.
Okay.
With input from the tennis coach and the athletic director. The layout of the course, of the courts.
So it's.
So where is the student and parent input, community member input? This is something that we continue to say over and over again, because then when things are done and then parents or students or community members have questions and they weren't actually involved in any of the planning, then people are frustrated. How can we, from the onset and the front side, make sure that we have the students who actually use the course, community members who plan to utilize the course, and parents have some voice and involvement in it at this point?
You can ask for involvement.
We're gonna get plans coming back to us. You say, Tracy, you're saying like we need people to give input before that?
Who is that?
That's Katie.
Hi, Katie. Yes, you need to have plans, but I would think I would want to hear from a player. You have the coach in there, which is nice, but I would want to hear from a player or a community member that plays tennis, because there might be something that we're not thinking of that they would like involved in this process. And definitely, I think it helps the process to have people from the beginning involved in having input.
Yeah, we were actually, I was speaking to, at the High Point, one of the local community members says he was playing tennis over here during the lockdowns. Yep, and he was suggesting some things like pickleball, and that was part of like one of the things that we were contemplating, putting at least one court in for that, and that's an up and coming, and just getting his input from somebody that's out in the community playing was good.
So let me ask you, is it better to have something drafted to look at and then let people get together and critique it, or is it better to get input before you do any drawing from the architectural perspective? Do you have a preference? Either Mike or Fred?
I guess normally you would want to do it before you start putting pen to paper. What I can do is have our landscape architect, once we get the surveys back, would probably be a good point, to go over a design of what we've incorporated out there, and then get whatever design info or parameters or scope. We just want to be cognizant of scope creep, right? That's always something you have to be careful of. People might start asking for something that we didn't anticipate or budget for. Someone might say, well, we want water fountains out there, or whatever, it's that type of thing. We didn't anticipate that. That wasn't something we talked about initially. So just keep that in mind. You kind of want to make sure that it's not an open pocketbook when you get into the design of who gets involved in those meetings.
Absolutely. And I mean, as a steward of the district and the financial health of the district, I think that's always going to be in the back of our minds. But one of the things you do is you open it up to everyone in the beginning so everyone feels important. And I think this is an issue that kind of spans district-wide, not just facilities, but everyone wants to feel as if they're heard. And people who send their children here, they want to make sure their children are taken care of and that their voice is important. And so no matter who you are, right? We have a diverse group of people, diverse children, and there may be different needs that maybe the architect or the board or the committee is not thinking of that it would be helpful to hear from in the beginning. That's all I'm saying. If people don't agree, that's fine. And if you don't take the person's suggestion, that's fine. But at least they know they were heard in the beginning.
Sure.
Okay,
so we'll work with Dennis and set up a date once we have something significant to review. And then at that point, on the district side, you can have whoever you want at that meeting. And it can be virtual. It doesn't have to be in person either if it's more convenient to go over the plans that way.
Advertise for input on tennis court plans, so students and community. Okay.
Okay. I was just gonna say, when you open it, we also have to be a little cautious that if you let everybody in, you got too many cooks in the kitchen. And that's why you have architects and landscape architects. But, you know, be advised, we got a lot of people in the community and we can get 100 and something thousand different things. So we want input, yes, but we're not dictated by the community because you may never get the project done.
Yeah, in that same vein, I would recommend that there is someone on the committee here, maybe it's Dennis or someone else, that takes the lead and everything funnels through that person as far as the community's input. You might not want to your point, have 15, 20 people sitting at a table or on a conference call like this, looking at plans and scope and what the tennis court involves, because it could, like you just said, have too many cooks, and too many chefs in the kitchen for that.
Okay, let's try and get 5 people and see what we get.
Okay. So I agree with what you guys are saying. I'm just gonna throw out my 2 cents before I log on. I have to go and get my son. I just want to remind us that we hear what the community is going to say. That's great, that's good. We should be doing that, but we do have an educational lens. So I think we need to start with how are we going to use the facilities for our educational purposes first. And then anything else, if it fits within the scope, would be great. It might be that we might want to look at making sure it's accessible for special education or handicapped students before we throw pickleball lines in there.
I love that.
Take that lens on it as our primary viewpoint. And with that, I will be logging in remotely soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
I love that. I love that, Chris. I love that inclusion. And I would hope that everyone would think of ways to make it work rather than all of the obstacles in the way of having too many cooks in the kitchen. I like what you said, Trustee Warner, with having 5 people there. I heard when you heard me, I spoke about students because I do think we have to look at the educational purpose. I love the special needs lens as well to make sure everyone can be included. So thank you for that, Trustee Valen.
Good. Mr. Simon. You're muted. Did we lose him?
Okay, it's a very straightforward way of doing it. If you come up with conceptual drawings, without going to a lot of details, conceptual drawings that just give the dimensions and the layout, and then you ask people for input. And then you go back knowing what are the educational objectives of the board, and where's the money, where the fund is. Then you create the architectural drawings. But you would have gotten input, and I have been through processes like that. It works very well. You just come up with the concept, and just let everyone say, well, this, and then you go back and then you design.
2, 3. Very good. So it sounds like we have a consensus. That's our recommendation as a committee, that we try and get together a committee of 5 people. We have some representation from students. We have some representation for special needs. We have some representation from the community. And we have a draft document, and then we request input, and then we go to the architectural specs from that. That's our recommendation. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're good. Okay, continue.
Okay, so the Woodlands running track, in the same vein as the tennis court, letter of intent, we just got back, we submitted to the state. The budget was approved, and a survey is also required for that, and the proposal has been given to the district. So I would suggest then, if we're doing the same, I'll call it pre-design community involvement for the track, I'm sorry, for the tennis courts, you probably want to do the same thing for the track potentially. And by all means, I would probably do them at the same time, just to keep things moving. So we'll do that. Highview Elementary School, a partial window replacement was submitted to the state on 10/12. No update further on that project. Going up to the next page.
Oh, sorry. Oh.
Thank you. The fire hydrant project was submitted to the state on 8/7. Today, we just received word that they have started technical review. So that's a good sign. We'll address some of the comments we got initially on some of the paperwork, but technical review should start. And then you'll just be waiting after that's completed for your fiscal review and permit issuance. So there might be another month or two still of time waiting to get a permit for that, but at least that's now on their agenda to start reviewing. EPC project was submitted on 9/6. No further update on that. Partial roof replacement at Bailey. This is the shingled portion of the roof. Was submitted on 8/30. No update on that project. Now the new projects, the flat roofs at Bailey, letter of intent is going up as well. Like I said before, that'll go up at the same time as Woodlands. And the budget was approved for the 1.2 million, so we're starting that. Woodlands roof, same thing. Letter of intent's gone up. We're going to start scheduling some roof cores, pull tests, environmental sampling, testing, etc. And then finally, a smaller project that we were just informed about. I think this week we had one of our engineers go up, and this was for a grant that Ms. Raymond was able to procure for a science classroom at the high school, where we're looking to see if we can get the gas service back up and running in that room. So we just started pre-design on that, just to get our head around what exactly it entails. And that's it.
Question, David, in the handouts you gave out, I saw something about that grant being for the eye wash stations at the nurse and the science lab, so I wasn't sure if that's
included. It's included in that.
So, but also the gas piping
for one class.
For labs.
Just one class.
Okay, so the eye wash stations
In the labs itself, in the science
labs
lab.
as well as at the nurse, and then also the piping
In one room.
for one room. Great.
All right, by degrees, things are happening. Very good. Any further questions? Thank you.
Mr. Warner, I'd like to point out that we mentioned the problem with the gas lines at our walkthrough a year ago, September, the gas lines in the science labs. So I would hope we would move forward with that particular project as quickly as possible. It's not something incidental that we should address when we get around to it. There's some urgency to getting the science lab up and running.
I would agree with that. The education of the students that attend the schools always end up getting pushed to the back granted, we have safety and security things that keep getting pushed to the front, but we do need to not forget about that. I would agree with that.
And that leads us back to the what's next piece, and we're getting closer to that. All right, so now moving on to the smaller projects. Before we do that, I think we should do our picture walk. Can you bring up?
Do the entire screen for this.
The various photographs of ongoing projects. There's some things you've already heard about, and there will be a few things that we haven't gone over yet. But I think this is a good spot to tell us what we're looking at. So we're going to go picture by picture. So Dennis, what are we looking at?
We are looking at the cast iron pipe for sewage that cracked and needed to be replaced at RJ Bailey.
Okay.
The waistline was cracked. There's different pictures in there. This is the after picture after it was replaced.
Okay.
You want me to find the before?
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. Guess this is the before.
Yeah, that's one of them. And if you were to blow up that picture, you could just see the pipes were leaking sewage.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is it as well.
Yeah, you can see the water actually just
The corrosion.
leaking. That's one of the before pictures also from a different angle.
All right, cool. Well, I guess we'll go through them then. All right.
And yeah.
Okay, I guess this is LF Jackson. We've increased the lighting over there. We've had some issues with some of the poles that weren't working properly because the electrical lines haven't worked in how many years? The cable broke, and it's difficult to get across the parking lot. Trench 700-800 feet. It's costly. But what I did is I had one of the heads on this pole right here, a single unit replaced with 2 LED lights, and we angled them to increase the light and actually to save some energy also. And there's another pole similar down at the other end of the beginning of the roadway.
Okay.
Where I did the same process to that to quadruple the output of the lighting there.
Good.
Is there any reason why we don't use solar poles for these lights? If on the Regeneron parking lot, if anyone just wanted to see what they have there, you could just go on. They don't have any gates. All the lights in their parking lots are solar powered. I don't know what the cost differential is, but if it costs us $35,000 to trench and electrical wire, it might be cost effective to use solar powered lampposts.
Yeah, actually, by doing this now, we've negated the immediate trench work. I also had some LED lights installed on the facade of the building to illuminate the other dark spots of the parking lot. So at this point, we don't have to go out and do the $35,000 for the trenching and the $50,000 for the electrical.
Okay, so we've avoided it in this case.
In this case.
And in a future.
But I'm talking.
No, another year from now, we're gonna say, we need more
We
light
can
in this
look
other
into the
spot.
solar. We do have the one steam light outside of here. But you have to upgrade the batteries, but the technology is getting much better for solar.
Yeah, because I'm seeing it everywhere. They're using what Walter's talking about. So I think we in Greenburgh should be incorporating this as soon as we can.
A couple of the poles over at Jackson, though, that we would have to do some significant tree work done. It's the shady over there. It's not the prime spot with all the trees coming up the roadway and the houses next door. So we have to take that into account also, but the solar is great if we get.
Okay. Could we get a commitment that will be evaluated when we put in the tennis and tracks? That at least we we'll put that and give that, and crunch the numbers on that to see if it makes sense to put them in.
You have no trees over
Yeah, I
there.
think that would be a great suggestion there, even if the lighting illuminated after hours for, several hours. That would, you'd save a lot of money year round.
I would like to see the facility just incorporate looking at solar regardless of any project from now on. And anything we can do, whether it's wind or solar, it should not be dismissed, but actually looked at.
Okay. Other comments?
Right. That is the skylight at the mansion. That was just installed this week. Couple different views. Those are just some of the pipes from the RJ Bailey sewage line that was replaced. This is the early childhood program ceiling that was replaced. We had some steam from the boiler room came up, and I guess it weakened the plaster to the point where we had a ceiling on top of another ceiling. The sub ceiling failed, and the new ceiling had some buckles in it, so we had our in-house people remove the two ceilings, secure the piping, and reinstall the ceiling and the lights in that classroom.
And what initially caused this?
There were nails instead of screws in old plaster that got wet. Too much weight of the two ceilings and the additional piping. I also had the contractors go through the building, so if it happened in this room, so that it wouldn't happen
Anywhere else.
along the run of the other classrooms.
Okay.
When was that original work done, when there was nails instead of screws?
That original work, I don't know, it was probably 30 or 40 years ago.
So that wasn't a repair?
No, that was existing, and somebody put that ceiling.
And then we put another ceiling
On
underneath
top of that, dozens of years ago.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pulis.
And this is just some of the ceiling as the process was unfolding.
And the classroom was evacuated, obviously.
The classroom was relocated for several days, and they teamed up with the room next door.
Okay.
And these are some of the electrical work. That was, if you go back, you'll see what the electrical wiring looked like before and after.
And the drop ceiling?
Yep, that's the drop ceiling, after it was repaired and replaced with new lighting. And that was done by our in-house people.
Okay. How long did this entire process take?
5 days, soup to nuts.
Okay. And to ensure that this is less likely to happen again at the furnace level.
We had a pressure relief valve that was sticking. It was serviced by the HVAC company.
Okay.
Those are just some of the cracks. If you look up, you can see where the waters, the building's 100 years old, and that's what happens to
even cast iron pipe.
Yep.
What's the pros and cons of replacement with cast iron versus PVC?
Sometimes it's code, sometimes it's a fire, it doesn't melt, give off toxic smoke. Typically, the plastic nowadays will last longer. But you really need to go with the building codes, with the certain plastic isn't allowed for certain sewage applications. Especially underground still.
Okay.
We're
looking at a sidewalk.
We're looking at the north side of RJ Bailey. There used to be the sidewalk to nowhere towards the garden. That section was removed and this section from the radius to the steps was replaced.
And we've been waiting to do that for a long time, and we had the storage containers for the construction of phase one were sitting there.
Right there,
And
yeah.
stopping us from doing it. So finally, the containers are gone and we did this. Okay. And is there anything else?
That's it.
Great. Okay, so as you can see, a lot of little things are getting done. You wanna go over the description part? Let's bring back up the agenda and we'll just see, we can skate through the pieces that are that we've already described, but let's see.
Okay, the ECP main building. We had flooding in the back of the building on 9/19 because student evacuation to Woodlands. Water came through the intake vent in room number 2. Mr. Messina and Mr. Gordon and myself, we determined the most cost-effective method of recurrence was to move the air intake. The contractor raised the air intake by about 3 inches at no additional cost to the district. And we also went over some concrete work where the building had been eroded, where the water actually ran under the building.
Okay.
That we need to take care of. On 10/20, the pressure relief valve tripped on the boiler under room 1. This caused the seam to compromise the old ceiling above the new ceiling.
And that's the thing we looked at.
Yeah, this is what we just went over, so Jackson.
Good.
Okay, the quotes, so we talked about the light poles, we don't need the trenching work anymore at this point. New LED lights were installed in the front of the building on the poles and on the front of the building. And the damaged boiler will be replaced as part of the energy performance contract. Highview, flooding due to the heavy rains on September 13th and 29th. To minimize future problems, we're gonna ensure that the roof drains have no blockages. We may need additional drainage for the grounds to reduce the groundwater. Evaluation will be incorporated into phase 2 roofing project. We also had a hot water circulator pump in the front wing with service. RJ Bailey, 1 boiler needs 2 new tubes, parts are on order. Currently, 1 boiler is functional, but that's sufficient to heat the building.
And how long do you think it'll take before the second boiler is back in service?
Oh, I'm told within 2 weeks or so.
Okay.
For the parts and another week to put it back together. So we're looking at 2 weeks from now or so. New gym pad wall costs were significantly greater. Seeking an alternate vendor. We're still working on that. We talked about the path to nowhere and Bailey that was replaced. Woodlands, we had sewer injector pumps in the boiler room that were replaced. Quotes for we're going to try to do the trenching at Woodlands on our own now. That's not as long, weather permitting. During the September 29th flood event, the ponds came up near the roadway and cars were relocated to in the back parking lot as a precaution. Per BBS, the parking lot was not actually flooded after 7 inches of rain, but the drain capacity it's sufficient for most storms that we have, but we need to, if we're going to have 7 inches of rain again on a regular basis, we might need to incorporate some drainage.
Okay, so action may be required.
Yeah, I guess most.
Maybe, okay. So you're gonna wait and see if we have more 7-inch rainstorms and then determine whether to allocate budget?
Mr. Messina or Mr. Siva, I guess most storm systems are designed for 2.5, 3 inches of rain.
Right.
When you get 7.5 or 8 or whatever it was, yeah, but if that's gonna be the norm, we're gonna have to adjust our plan here.
Okay, so for now you're waiting, but, okay.
Item 4 was spread on the football field.
Can ask a couple of questions on that.
Sure.
That road initially is a one lane, which is pretty disastrous considering all the cars that come there, create all kinds of mud. Is it possible to get the landscape architect to look at a double, plus we're gonna be having that other work done?
Yep, we've actually widened it with, I had the
Yeah.
contractor come in
But
and.
what's happening is now it's like the Beverly Hillbillies. So we need some, at least a one-time fix to get that road paved, but to stretch it out to 2 lanes, so that when there's a football game, you can actually get people there.
People are gonna wanna park on the roadway, it's.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we need to cost that out.
And after the work is done with the panels and everything over there, we may have to have more work done on that road.
Well,
because you're gonna have-
of course, you're gonna
Yeah,
do some
but
damage to the
meanwhile-
road, and so we were going back and forth as to whether to do it right away, because they're gonna come out there and lay out all those solar panels and do a bunch of construction work and put the vests out there, and yeah, so yes, things will get damaged a little bit.
What I'm just thinking is, on the plus side, if we get the 2 lanes in there, we probably won't have as much problem with the truck. But if you got different truck pudding, you're gonna start trenching, because the trucks are heavy. And they're actually gonna create more holes, which is gonna cost us more money to be filling in on a timely basis.
We have a building conditions survey item, I think, on paving this driveway, but I don't know if it's double wide. Do we know?
Do not know.
Okay, can we check on this and come back, next month?
Sure. And I think you're correct that there is a line item on there for paving a pathway. I think it's also for your ambulances that come to the football games or whatnot. They shouldn't be driving on a rickety RCA path typically. So we'll look into that. It might be one of the things we put on there or find money for to do ahead of the phase 3 bond.
And with the tree work on the campus, the mansion, EPS reported on the administration roof and masonry project, punch list items remain. Bus garage, we had a sagging fiber optic line was elevated. No LED lights were installed along the side of the building to illuminate the parking lot. And stays the same for the funding source for the buses.
And I don't think we're quite ready to go after the cost study yet. Because we want to see what's happening at the state level, so I guess there are, we're not the only school district to deal with this migration, and the whole question is this an unfunded or underfunded mandate? And so instead of chasing an individual grant and a few people getting it and most people not getting it, it may be that there will be enough pressure at the state level such that there will get to be more aid in some way, shape, or form, and then we could apply for that aid. So I'm hearing that we should just sit on this for a little bit and wait and determine when we want to go forward.
The only thing I would like to add to that is if we could get to legislators like maybe Andrea Stewart Cousins and them, and maybe apply for a test bus, like they did in White Plains, they did upstate, they actually had them, and I don't think it cost the district, I may be wrong, but I don't think it cost the district because it was in the paper that they did test runs with buses and they're still doing it. Maybe we can get one bus, maybe they can set up something like that and they can do a trial run to see, and we can get some data to find out whether it'll be feasible.
Pilot program.
So White Plains has it, I think there's 3 or 4 right up there in Westchester who got one bus and they're testing them out. So why can't we get it?
And is that a full-size bus or a small bus?
They have both running.
Okay.
We don't have the electric capacity to charge a bus.
What's that?
We don't have the electric capacity to charge a bus.
But according to some of the senators, the state senators, that can be allocated. I don't know what White Plains did, but I don't think they paid for it because they made a big deal about it. Senator Peter Harkin, he did a whole thing updated within all the papers, especially like the Examiner. So they had it going, and it's going right now. So we can find out, maybe they have a grant that says, hey, we'll give you the power line.
Oh, that would be a home run here, because most people don't have the extensive power lines like we own the whole roadway. That's.
Yeah, but just to try one,
Yeah.
I mean, every day they're doing something and it's busted. So
If our
why not
battery
put-
energy storage system is going to be exporting power to the world, okay,
Well,
then there should be a line, right?
Because when you go across the country, I've seen bus stations that have just solar panels on it that are doing the energy from the Almighty up there. So maybe we don't know, but I think it's something to explore.
Mr. Simon?
Yeah, I think another source of information, the planning board set up a alternative energy committee. They just did their first chapter, which was on solar panels that the planning board just recommend for approval by the town. The next project they're working on is charging stations. So I think there's an opportunity just to exchange information, because that group is gathering information from, consultants from all sorts of agencies and everything else. So if there's an opportunity to share information, there's no reason why we should reinvent the wheel. We might have something that the town could use. The town might have something that we could use. So I think there should at least be a communication between that group and what we're doing here to see if there's anything in common.
Who's a good contact person for that?
The contact person is Leslie. I'll get her email address and everything and send it to you, Dave. She's the chair of that committee.
Thank you.
I've just looked up that they have a program called Safe Streets and Roads for All that would pay for projects aimed at making roadways safer. And including, they say that they were doing bus funding for electric. And this school district that got a first bus is Tarrytown School District. So maybe there's something we're missing.
Okay.
What's the name of it again?
It was under a program, Safe Schools.
Safe Streets.
Safe Streets and Roads for All, but it's all incorporated in. And Tarrytown just got a delivery of their first electric bus. So they applied for grant. I don't know how they did it, but it's right here in the paper.
Okay.
And ultimately, we're going to have to get there. So we need to start looking at solutions instead of ways in which it doesn't work. So thank you, Mr. Morton, for bringing it up and for continuing to stick and pushing us toward looking at options.
Thank you, Tracy. MH. Making a hack. Sorry, I can't see you.
No, sorry, it is just my initials today. I think I am confused with the busing situation because I know that Royal Coach is technically on our property, and so you said we don't have the electricity for electric buses, but they are an outside company outside of our district, correct?
Correct, but they rent our facility. Everything on Pat Capone Road is Greenburgh Central School District, including the electricity and the bus garage.
Okay, but when it comes to as far as like services that are required by the state when it comes to a busing company, wouldn't it be the busing company's responsibility to meet some of these requirements?
I don't know.
Well, what's happening with fuel? Are we paying for fuel?
We pay
Because
for X number of gallons of fuel. After that, it's their responsibility.
Okay, and does that mean that we're not subject, that fuel's not subject to normal sales tax, or how does that work?
We pay for all of the fuel. Once we hit the certain gallon, we still pay for it, but take it off our bill.
Okay. Chris?
Hello? Okay, so I missed part of this conversation, so the only thing I'm going to add to what's being said is I'm going to attend another advocacy meeting for the Westchester Putnam School Board Association in December to get an update on this. There were a lot of concerns from the school districts at the last meeting I went to, and so there's a lot of lobbying happening to increase funding, to possibly put a delay on some of this being implemented, and to just inform the different state agencies on the issues that those who do have electric buses are running into. And thank you, Megan, for pointing out that we do not own the buses. I think that's the key point in all of this. And Ms. Raymond for pointing out that we lease them the facilities. So maybe at our December FinFac meeting, I can give you guys an update on what the temperature is out there among the school districts and what kind of plans are underway. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay, moving on. 7:43. To finance, Lisa Raymond, Assistant Superintendent for Business. I believe your first item was that you wanted to talk about BOCES a little bit. We had a request to find out how we use those services, and I think you have a PowerPoint.
I'll get to it.
Green.
This one. All right.
Okay, so I was asked to give an overview of what BOCES services are. Next screen. So BOCES was started around 1945, and it stands for Board of Cooperative Educational Services. And a BOCES provides shared programs between more than one school district within New York State. You have to have at least 2 school districts that want to share a service. And obviously this is economical for all districts to offer these programs that a district otherwise could not afford on their own. All commitments must be made by May 1st of each year. And that's because if 2 school districts want to share a COSER and BOCES needs to hire a teacher or a staff member, they need the commitment from the district that they're going to do this COSER because of the fact that they would have to possibly hire additional staff.
I'm sorry, I have to stop you. You're saying COSER, but I don't think you explained what that is. So I know, but I don't know if everyone here knows.
Yep, we will explain that in another slide. Thank you. Contracts between BOCES and school districts are for 1 year. You can renew, change, or cancel it within the year. If you cancel it within the year after May 1st, you're still obligated to pay for that service because they have hired the staff. You'll just get a refund in the next year. And if it is something that you're going to do with another school district and you want it to be multiple years, you can sign on for that also. Next slide, please. So as Trustee Mayor said, I will say that a cross contract, a COSER is a cooperative service amongst 2 districts, and shortened it's called a COSER. So not all BOCES offer the same services throughout the state. So there are for example, there are a handful of BOCES that offer grant writing services. Southern Westchester BOCES, Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES do not offer grant writing services, but Capital Region BOCES, there's a BOCES on Long Island, there's one up by Buffalo, offer grant writing services. We use the policy update service, which comes from Erie One BOCES. Not all BOCES do that. Same thing with safety. We do that through Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. And then there are some special schools and programs for some of our students when we send them out that are only offered through certain BOCES. So if we want to do our home district, our home BOCES is Southern Westchester. If we want to do something with another BOCES, then we have to do what's called a cross contract. We'll initiate that cross contract. Dr. Iverson will sign it. It will go to Dr. Coles at Southern Westchester BOCES. He'll sign it, giving his approval, because he is our BOCES, that we can join this COSER with another BOCES. And the reason that happens is because if Southern Westchester BOCES offers that service, he will deny it because he wants it to stay within his BOCES. So, next, please. So,
Ms. Raymond, I'm sorry, it took me a minute to unmute. I just want to make a point of fact there because you explained it eloquently, but you said that Dr. Iverson would sign it and then Dr. Coles. So the board, and I think the public does need to understand, the board does not have a say in that COSER when it is signed at that point. So there are times that, that the school district may choose to evaluate the need and then sign into a COSER without it coming to, to a board meeting, to a board vote or anything like that. So I think that's important because I think board members were surprised when they learned that as well. So I just wanted to let people know that. Sorry.
No, that very well said, Trustee Mears. So what is the value of going through a COSER for BOCES? Again, like I said, you might, a perfect example would be, say, career and technical education. Say we have, let's just say we have 3 students that want to take automotive mechanics. For us to hire someone that has that expertise, a teacher, plus benefits and getting a garage, let's say, et cetera, would cost us a lot of money. For 3 students where we can share that with another district and they go to BOCES and they learn those trades. That's why we share things like that. And BOCES was created by the state so that it would help serve all our students and promote equity regardless of enrollment, income, or size of our tax base and or size of our student population. They tried to relieve the financial burden on all school districts. So what happens is when you go through a BOCES, that will create BOCES aid, which is a state aid that we receive, as I'm sure you've heard me talk about. You don't get BOCES aid if you don't use a COSER, obviously. And that aid that is generated comes back directly to the school. It does not go to our BOCES, it comes to us. And it's all based on a state formula. So for example, there's a law that says if we are going to have a teacher, say in one of our COSERs, only $30,000 of their salary is aidable. So if I'm sharing that with another district, 15-15. If I'm sharing that with 4 districts, then it gets smaller. But benefits on a teacher are aided at 100%. Okay, so when we say sometimes that we're going to join a COSER, we are going to get aid on it, but we might not get the full aid because of the salary limitation. We also do not receive BOCES aid on any of our special education services and or students and classes because we get what's called private excess cost, high excess cost aid. That comes through for us, even though they're going to BOCES, they're our students, but our service that we have that does that billing for us puts those students, and that's in another category that they're being serviced by BOCES. So we get that aid instead of BOCES aid, which is usually better for a district.
So if the person goes to an actual BOCES facility, what happens then?
If they're a special education student? So what happens is we will get every month, Amy, we get the bill from BOCES, and that bill will detail and it will tell us what students of ours are in a special ed program and what services they are getting. And then Mr. Giarusso will send that to the company. Is that Mad? now that does our billing for us, and they use that information to file for the cost date for us.
For the cost date.
Yeah.
It goes back to the cost date.
Right.
Got it.
Okay, next group. So, I was asked, what coasters do we belong to, for Greenburgh? And we do belong to quite a few. So everybody pays BOCES administrative costs. We talk about that during the budget, and that is basically the administrative cost for Southern Westchester BOCES to run. Okay, and it also includes their share of their own, our share of their capital expenditures. If they were to go for a capital project, that would have to be approved by all of the districts that are in that BOCES. If it's approved, then we have to pay a share of that capital project, and that is, we pay that through the administrative costs. Then under our Board of Education, we do board policies, board docs, and our code of conduct. Business office, we have all the accounting software, which is called Envision. We belong to the State Aid Planning Services, the GASB services, which are Governmental Accounting Standard Board, that we have to comply with for every year for our external audit. And instead of us hiring an actuary to do that work, we join with those other schools through BOCES, and they do the work for us, and we only pay a portion of their services. Our employees have to do GNC training, which are the mandatory right to know, DASA, sexual harassment, all those trainings, we do that through BOCES. And our absence and our professional growth services go through that, which is called Frontline. And then our employee assistance program is also a service through BOCES. We use School Dude for buildings and grounds, and that is for any maintenance items that people want to put in. So Mr. Pugliese will know that, I have a light bulb out in my classroom. Can somebody, come and change it? It's that
request system, right?
Request system. Our school safety, EnviroScience is that firm that we use to do all of the testing, whether it be asbestos testing, etc., and our security system. And then our Zoom, which we use for all of our meetings, that goes through BOCES, our network, internet, our eSchool, ClassLink, School Messenger, Blackboard, all of those kind of things. And then that goes through the LYRIC, the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center, and that has a help desk. And our copier leases all go through BOCES because we'll get BOCES 8 on that instead of us going to Xerox and getting our own. We go through BOCES and we do a lease agreement and we get aid on that. So we've done all of our copiers. And that's also where Mr. Lease gets, we tried to get all of our Chromebooks, our desktops, we go through BOCES so we can get the aid on it.
Good.
In addition, we belong to Arts and Education. We try to get any field trips or any of the art when they're taking them to different events. We try to get them to go through Arts and Education because we will get BOCES aid on it, which will help reduce the cost of that trip. We have special schools. This is all for our special education students. So when I have here occupational therapy, speech therapy, one-on-one aids, that is everything that is specific to a student that is there. That doesn't mean all students are getting it, it's whatever is in their IEP. And IEP Direct, which we use, it also is a BOCES COSER. Our career and technical education goes there. We send students there in the AM and the PM. And our school libraries use BOCES for the media services, video streaming, automation, online databases. And then again, computer assisted instruction. This is all in Mr. Lease's venue where we have the Grad Point, the web video, Castle Learning, Brain Pop, all our internet filters, any hardware repairs, software purchases, and our data dashboard. And then we go through BOCES for our interscholastic athletics. That's where we pay for all of our referees that we have in any of our games, for the officials, our huddle system, and family ID. Go ahead, Luke.
Someone's raising their hand, by the way.
Oh, Megan?
I just had a question about with BOCES. I know that there's often rebates in addition to the discounted rates. When the rebates come in, are they divvied out to the specific category that they came from, or do they get applied to the complete fund?
No, it goes to the revenue side. It doesn't get divided up amongst whatever the program is.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Questions?
I think that's it.
So it was also asked, last school year, we spent about $4.6 million in BOCES services. 1.3 million of that was for special education services, which would go through the private excess cost and the high cost aid. So that net was about $3.3 million. That before BOCES aid. You always receive BOCES aid a year later. So we're in the 22-23 year, the 23-24 year, we will be getting our aid based on what we spent in 22-23. Megan, do you still have a question?
I think she just raised her hand and.
I think she just, yeah, she put it down.
Yeah.
Okay. So are there any other questions? Good, thank you. It's always good to know how the school district works. Okay, so then on to. Yes.
Just in general, how is our spending tracking our budget? How well are the two tracking?
So are you saying that that there's some correspondence between when we fund a portion of the BOCES budget as a member of BOCES and what we do as an individual school district? Is that your question?
Okay, no. Well, I was more general, but we only talk about BOCES, so I would.
You're muted. We lost you.
I said that was a general question, but we're only on BOCES, so I'll ask that question later.
Okay. I think he's asking how we're doing budget-wise in terms of planned spending versus actual spending. I think that's the question.
Okay.
But go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
So we have the two $500,000 grants that we received, one from former Assemblyman Abenante. And as I reported last time, we've gone through all of the process to get that money. Once that starts, then once the project begins, I will be able to apply for that funding so that we can receive it. The money, the $500,000 from Senator Stuart Cousins, I had to wait for the bond vote.
Mm-hmm.
Now that has passed and the board does the resolution, I will finish that paperwork, and then that will be in the process. And when that project starts, I can apply to receive that funding. And I just filed the first leg of the paperwork for the money from Assemblyman Shinsky. So we had done that. They had had some questions. We answered those. And now we're just waiting for the next, either the next round of questions and or the next process.
The initial application. All right.
As far as the American Rescue Plan is concerned, we, as I had said last time, Amy is keeping track with Ms. Sindona, who is Mr. Puglise's assistant. We are tracking the expenses there as they come in by project. That way we can file the FS10A to get those funds to reimburse us for these expenses, which is where we were going first, so we didn't lose any of that money. So that is also in the process. Now that we have EBS's update of the executive summary and 5-year plan. I will work with them on updating that really big spreadsheet that we had done. I would like to update it, but I would also like to speak with Fred and or Mike, where they say here that we have to account for increase in cost. What do they feel we should do so we could try to maybe have a more realistic numbers?
Okay.
Okay, so I will work with them. Amy and I actually pulled that up today. Right, the building condition survey has to be adjusted for inflation. And then I only saw today, I believe, Trustee Warner, you sent the soccer team improvements.
Yeah, I had sent that to the board earlier on when I first received it in August. The question was, you know, hey, what about my sport, right? If you're doing something for tennis and track, and there was a danger that there would be deluged with requests, and then, you know, bond creep would ensue. But they were patient. We said, please wait until after we've gotten through this bond vote, and then we will consider your request. So I forwarded that now to you, so you can take a look at it. I can see that there's quite a lot of thought has gone into it in terms of what staffing requirements would be, what we would need to do to, you know, improve the soccer program overall. And then there's sort of the physical component. I looked at the scheduling. I thought the expected turnaround time from the New York State Education Department was much shorter than the reality. So I'm thinking we need to go over that. We also need to go over the numbers of what the preliminary estimates of costs are before it's committee ready. Okay. So take a look at that, and we should come back to it next meeting.
Okay, you got it.
Okay. Audit committee update. Chris, are you online? Well, I can see she's there. She's muted at the moment. Chris?
David?
Yes.
Yes, I'm online. I was looking at what you were just talking about.
If we're still on budget,
Question answered first?
if we're still on budget, I would like to ask my budget question now.
Go ahead.
How do we compare? We have a 5-year plan. We have a budget for these projects, and we have how are these three things integrated? Do they follow one another? Are they completely independent, or there's any attempt to try to make it consistent with our spending, the 5-year plan, and our budget restrictions?
So are you asking us, are we budgeting on a 5-year basis as opposed to on a year?
I'm saying, are these things integrate? We have a 5-year plan, okay? Then we have certain things that we're spending. And so obviously, what we're currently spending, we'd like to see how does that compare to what we're budgeting? And then how is that compared to our 5-year plan? So all the 3 steps are integrated as opposed to taking them as separate entities.
Okay, so my impression is that we're operating under what I would call a greedy strategy, which is that you figure out what you want in 5 years. You prioritize things from the most important to the things that can wait a little bit longer, and then you have your budget that comes in on a yearly basis, and you achieve as much of the goals as you can in a given year. And conditions financially change so much over a given year that your plans are constantly shifting, but you maintain that set of 5-year goals and work towards them and achieve as many as you can. That's what I think is happening. Are there certain mechanisms you're looking for that you don't think you're seeing that we need to implement?
No. What that explanation is fine. You have a great overall plan that that's your mission, your overall plan, and then every year, you you have to modify that in the face of reality, but your overall plan is the same for 5 years, and then, so that's fine. Then my next question is, our current spending, how does that compare to what we're budgeting? So for instance, all of these various things that we have planned to do with this $13.5 million that we got. So the question is, as we take on a project, how does that measure with the remaining money of, how do you manage your projects to stay at that 13.5 million? That's what I'm saying.
Well, we really don't have a choice because the $13.625 million is what we asked the taxpayers to approve. We cannot go over that dollar amount. So I would say, one, we have to wait for the bids to come in to make sure that we stay within that. Otherwise, something needs to be adjusted somewhere. And then we keep detailed spreadsheets between Mr. Puglisi's department and my department on what's being spent, where and how, because that comes in on sheets every time a contractor submits, right? They have to do, what are they called? Those payment, right? Payment applications. So for example, when we budgeted the money for the mansion roof came in lesser than what we budgeted for, and we were very happy about that. Obviously we would be. So we're making sure that we stay within that dollar limit. Once that project is over, if there's anything that's left over, then that would be something that we will ask the taxpayers to put back into the capital fund for something else. So we are restricted to stay within all of these projects, what the architects and what they've estimated and what we've asked taxpayers that we can spend. As far as other things that are in the 5-year plan, Mr. Puglisi and I at times have gone through it, and if we see that, gosh, we look like we're saving money here, could we get this bathroom done, or can we get this project done, get it off of this plate of the 5-year plan? And we're starting to do some of these little things on our own through the budget process. Okay, thank you. Something you just said to me I didn't know before, I wasn't clear about. But if you have a project you have 2 projects for $1 million. One project you spend $800,000, and the other project is coming in at 1.2. You can't just shift that money. You have to go through a budget vote, even though the total amount is still the 2 million, but you can't shift that money unless you put it to a vote. Correct. You can't. Okay. You can't spend more than what you've asked for approval for. Okay. Thank you. That clarifies it for me.
Okay, great. Chris, did you want to say a few words about what's happening with the audit committee?
My few words are the same as last month, although I guess we have approved the external audit and the corrective action plan since we last met. That was approved at the October 10th meeting. The New York State Controller's audit continues. We hope to get a report on the first part of the audit sometime in December. The second part of the audit, which is currently the time of materials regarding procurement, we're hoping they will wrap that up in December, and that report would be issued sometime in 2024. But everything's to be determined whether those dates are accurate. We continue to seek 2 volunteers to serve on the audit committee. If anyone is interested, they can email me at cvalin@greenburghcsd.org. C-V as in Victor, A-L-I-N @greenburghcsd.org. Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
And we were notified today by the one auditor that is currently here every day that she will be done with time and material in December.
Okay,
great. Thank you.
Good. The energy performance contract rebate credit is pending. The EPC packet was resubmitted to NYSED for approval in September. I assume there's no change to that. We received building permits for the RJ Bailey Auditorium, but of course, we're sitting here waiting for there to be a roof, so we're working on putting the roof together, okay? The facilities fund update.
David, before you continue, and I might have missed it, forgive me if it's a repeat, what is the timeline for getting on that roof?
I believe if Mike and Fred are still there, but I believe he said that but they're gonna submit to SED by the end of this year, and it's up to an 18-week wait.
I'm sorry, and so many projects. I thought this was submitted and resubmitted and approved. Why are we submitting again?
Which project are you speaking
You
about?
want flat roof, you want the shingled roof, or do you want the auditorium? So.
So my point is the auditorium, because as you were just talking about the auditorium roof needing to be done first.
So I can answer your questions. The auditorium roof, the shingled roof, was submitted to the state. That's in the queue for review. That'll get approval or reviewed prior to the flat roof areas that were just approved via the bond last month. So that'll go up afterwards.
So all the different roofing areas have to be complete before, because Bailey's a large school, not large, but it's several areas. So the every bit of the roof piece has to be approved before. Or what piece of the roof is above?
I'm following what you're saying. It's a good question. Thank you. It's the reason why we did the shingled roof separately, and it was because we didn't want to know. First, we didn't know if we were going to get the approval on the bond to do the flat roof. So we said, let's do the shingled roof separately. Now that we have the approval for both, we have the option to bid it all together for economy of scale. But if we find that the state's taking too long, and we get the approval on the shingled roof, we could always award or go out to bid for just the shingled portion of Bailey and the auditorium work at Bailey separately from the flat roof area. So that's something that you have as an option, and it's good. It's good to be flexible, that if you find that what is taking too long to get a permit, we have that option to go up separately to a bid.
I love the flexibility. Is there a financial piece of?
It's a small economy of scale. Again, that the shingled roof area is probably half of the school. The flat roof compromises about the other 50% of the roof. So ideally, you'd want to give it all to one roofer to do the entire roof, just for warranty purposes. But if we had to break it out, it's been done before. A lot of times you don't have the money to do the entire building. For example, the high school, like we said, is so large. If it comes in that we can't get it all done over one summer, maybe do it the following summer for the other areas. So,
and the reason that so people may not realize, this auditorium's been closed 5 years, 4 years. It's been closed for years.
Two?
It was open.
Oh, well, it was partially used 3 years ago, but during rain, but it was limited.
Because it keeps raining in the ceiling,
and the seating.
So this is somewhat of a priority, because one project has to happen before the second project. And so you're pushing it out maybe 2 more years, which is fine, but adding on to those, you said 3 years. So adding on to those 3 years is a 5 years that an auditorium in a school has been closed, that are cohorts of children that are not able to do a school performance, that have to be bused, if for lack of a better term, back and forth to the middle high school, which actually doesn't happen. So it's not like the kids learn to put on a play and get bused back and forth to do it on a stage. They're doing it in a gym area. So the more that we wait, the more we're waiting. So I don't want it to kind of not get looked at in that way.
Okay, so at what point, the question is, we've now established that if this third piece takes too long, we'll go ahead without it, right? And so then the only real question is, at what point is the turnaround too long?
Mr. Warner, I would like to rephrase this. We want to get that auditorium completed as quickly as possible. We should not delay it, waiting for an additional approval so that we can get the economy of scale. It is important to the students' educational experience to have the auditorium, and we need it done immediately, if not sooner.
Thank you.
I think you have to wait for the approval from SED before you can do that roof work.
The initial approval, yes, but we don't want to wait for the approval for the entire roof.
Shingle. So if we can get the shingle portion
to allow us to fix the auditorium.
So for anybody who's not familiar, the flat portion of the roof is basically over classrooms. The shingle portion of the roof is over things with higher ceilings like the auditorium and the gym. So so we have different permits. We didn't know if we'd have enough money to cover the entire roof until we passed the phase 2 bond. So now the question is, can we go forward and not wait for the third piece? And the that seems to be yes. We can go forward and not wait for the third piece.
Yeah.
Okay. Megan.
Agree on the yes part on that. My question is, I know that we have to go out to bid for each situation, but is there an understanding that contractors could have that if they do a good job with the first portion of the Bailey roof, there is the perspective that they could do the roofs in the other buildings in the district as sort of motivation to do a good job on this first piece, knowing that there's more work coming down the line?
That all has to go out to bid, and it's the lowest responsible bidder. It can't be just held for that contractor.
So we are required to choose the lowest?
Lowest responsible bidder.
Well, if a bidder puts in, say, a price that's equivalent, but they prove that their record by doing an excellent job on the previous job, couldn't that be defined as the lowest responsible bidder because you already just determined that they are a responsible company?
That's if you do an RFP.
No, that's why you gotta put it out to bid. You can't just give it to them.
No, I said after you get the bid, and they're pretty much equivalent. Then you still have, and the one that might be, the one that who just did an excellent job might be, say, $1,000 more. You have to go with the lowest bidder, even though the one you just finished proved that they are a responsible.
You would have to prove that the person that was the lowest bidder was not responsible enough to do that work. And that's very hard to prove. I've done that. I've been in situations in other schools, and it's very hard to prove that somebody is not a responsible bidder.
No, I'm not saying they're not responsible, but this one is okay, but that's the definition of the state. But you have to prove that it's not that the other one is irresponsible. This one is more responsible by demonstrating the quality of their past work. But it doesn't follow that way in the school bids.
No.
Okay.
So I sense that you want to go change the law?
No. If that's the way
it's just it will take a Herculean effort to
No. If that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But I did I'm not Don Quixote trying to change the world, but I'm just trying to understand how it operates. So the explanation, it is what it is, and I accept that.
Okay. So now let's move on to, I believe it's the facilities fund update.
I sent you that, did you get that?
Yes, it should be posted. So
there's another
there's a capital project fund, and all the stars aligned this year in accordance with our audit.
That one right there.
And
I know.
inflation meant that more money came into our coffers, the sales tax revenue was good, the benefits costs were lower, and we ended up with this. Could you describe this?
Yep, so as you know, we went to the taxpayers to ask to establish a capital reserve. So in 21-22, we put $1,404,844 in there from excess fund balance. We transferred $3.5 million with this last bond resolution. That board did that prior to the vote. And then the 22-23 excess fund balance was $4,497,518. So that put in the capital reserve a little more than 9.4 million. We're using 3.5 for phase 2, which will leave a little more than 5.9 million in that reserve at this time.
So we have $5.9 million that we can spend on capital projects as long as we get voter approval. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And remember that we can have this reserve for 10 years, and you can accumulate up to $15 million in this, and that would include interest. These numbers here right now do not include any interest.
And I assume that we should not expect an excess fund balance of $4 million every year. This is almost a freak occurrence.
Well, that you have to remember too, because we got some additional revenue in some categories. If you remember, we had 2 journal entries that had to be made for monies that we spent in last school year, but the auditors put it into the next school year. And if you remember, I had asked the board prior to June 30th if we could transfer money into the tax tertiary reserve and into the employee benefits reserve. Our employee benefits reserve was funded to the maximum it could be, so we were not permitted to put money in that. And the tax tertiary reserve, we because if you remember, there was a time where because of the pandemic and nothing was going through the courts, now all of a sudden things were going through and we had money in the general fund to pay for it. We didn't take it out of the reserve at the time, so our reserve now is funded to where it should be. So we couldn't put the 1.25 million in there. So that's where it is. That's where this money has accumulated to, but it will not be like that this year.
Okay, so now one of the things that we want to be looking at this meeting and in the next few meetings is we're sitting on $5.9 million that we can allocate to various capital projects. So we're not done yet. The next thing to look at is skipping to item 10. What projects should be included in phase 3? When should phase 3 begin, and how much risk are we willing to accept? We're going to take into account as we design what happens in phase 3, the fact that there's this $5.9 million sitting there. Okay, so I wanted to establish that. Now the next piece is to look at what's on our list. What was in all those building condition surveys that is now planted in our 5-year facilities plan, and we're tracking what we've got done and what we are taking care of and what's still on the list that we haven't looked at yet. So we need to go to that 5-year facilities plan document. We had it updated by BBS Architects, and I want you to walk us through it. And as we walk through it, look for items that you think are potential for the next project.
We're not making any major decisions tonight.
We're not making any, it's 8:30 at night. We're setting it up. Okay. We're setting it up. Yes.
Can I make a request that this go earlier in the agenda for next month's meeting?
Yes.
Because this is a really important piece, and again, Rich represents a lot of what we've done has been review and repeat. This is where we need to go forward.
Of next meetings. Will do.
And also, like in the preliminary, can we talk about it a little bit beforehand, just to, or send out some items that maybe we missed, and, we allowed to talk back and forth about it, so that we're prepared for the next meeting.
You're committee members, you're not limited like us board members, okay, you can talk to people. Okay, so,
let me get to it. Which one is it?
Fifth one in, next to the
The
green.
download.
So this is fine, this can be homework. All right, so, Mr. Messina, I believe you put this together?
Yes.
You wanna walk
So
us
this is your 5-year capital plan that's required by the state. And your cycle just started again, I believe, this year. So now you're good for the next 5 years with the state, and what you're required to do is to just update this list every year as items come off, right? And then 5 years from now, we'll have to go back out there again and resurvey the buildings and update this list and add new items accordingly. So all I did was go through this, and something to keep in mind, I see it's on right now, it says budgets. The numbers on this list was taken from the walkthrough that was done back in 2020. So as Ms. Raymond said, we'll work with her to update these numbers for inflation based upon what year we're in at the time that we're looking to do these items. So if you scroll down to the next page, so you'll see on the top there's a key, things in green were included or completed in phase 1. Things that you see on this list and highlighted in yellow are included in the energy performance contract, which will be done in 2024 and 2025. And then items in purple or pink are part of phase 2, the bond, and those will be done again in 24 or 25. So as you scroll through these items, and I don't know if you want to go through all these tonight, it's 13 pages. Actually, I'm sorry, it's 30 pages of items of things, but they are prioritized. So you'll see things on year 1 or really health and safety issues that should be done first, right? For example, the first item on there is the RPZ backflow prevention device. The existing ADA accessible playground not being ADA compliant. Those type of things you'll find in year 1, priority 1 items. And my recommendation, and Fred would probably concur, is that if you're going to look to make a phase 3 bond, you try to pick off a lot of these year 1, priority 1 items at each building. There may be a need or a want to do items that are further down the priority, number 3s, number 4s. But I would recommend trying to stay in priority 1s or 2s, because those are the things that really are more pressing to get done first.
Okay.
And again, the priorities are actually, architectural and engineering priorities. So the district would have to weigh in on something that you would consider an educational priority. So you might feel that something we show as a 3 is actually a 1 or a 2. So, this becomes your report. We prioritize just based upon our definition.
To a higher priority than they initially had, because we feel that they have educational value.
Trustee Warner.
Go ahead.
Trustee Bauman has.
Chris?
Thank you. Before the next meeting, I will need time to study this, but I also know that over the last few years, Mr. Pugliese and prior to him, Mr. Falcone, they were able to do some of these items out of their yearly budget and with in-house staff. I was wondering if we could also get an idea of what something that could be built into to the normal budget and staffing. So some of these lower dollar amounts that are in year 1, for example, just so we know that something else that could be taken off the list for a small bond. I don't know if that's possible or if if you know what my request is. And of course I turn the pages and the dollar amounts just go up, but I saw a couple things, one that were like $4,000, $10,000.
The December meeting,
Okay.
Mr. Puglisi and I will go through this. And we'll identify what we have done and or what we can do on our own.
Right, like remove a sink. I'm imagining that's something that could be done in-house.
Like you said, Trustee Valen, since I've been here and I worked with Mr. Falcone and Mr. Puglisi, we have gone through and tried to do some of this in-house and on our own.
Right. Your the big spreadsheet that you created for us, kind of broke those, had a different color. I don't know if we did colors, but did identify some of those. So it's kind of just adding that piece into this document somehow, or identifying, I'll go through with my pink highlighter or something. Okay, thank you.
I was gonna take this document and update that document for the group.
Okay, good.
Super, thank you.
I just wanted to point out one other thing which might help you as well. If you go a little bit, scroll down just a little bit to get to the top of the page. I'm sorry. No, go the other way. My bad.
Sorry.
That's okay. So, no, you went too far. Okay, right there. So if you see on the very top of the headings there, it says new construction, addition, alterations. To the very far right, you'll see two columns. One says bond, one says capital.
Mm-hmm.
When we do these building condition surveys, we'll identify initially, and it can change, what we feel might be a bond item or what might be a capital item, something that you can handle yourselves potentially, or don't do it under a separate capital fund, repair fund, whatever. So that might help you and try to identify something that you might want to take on yourself or not include in a bond. That's all.
And typically the lower price items we would indicate as capital. The more expensive items we would indicate as bond, just because the larger items will not fit well within a capital line item.
Okay.
So if I can just follow up on that. So to clarify, when you say capital, you're not talking about the capital reserve, which is usually saving up for big projects. You're talking about capital, your yearly capital.
Capital fund. Capital fund.
Okay, and then just another thing, because you kind of read my mind out earlier, I was also looking at the repair column, because I know we also have a small million or so in repair reserve, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think you'd indicated to us a year or two ago that that doesn't necessarily mean, having an X in that column doesn't necessarily mean it would be the legal definition of something we could use repair reserve funding for. Is that correct? Am I remembering correctly?
I think we would have to go back and relook at that based upon how your attorney has defined for you what you can and can't use the repair reserve for. I think we'd have to go back and just check each of those items, Trustee Valen.
Okay, thank you. And then so just for the next meeting, if Ms. Raymond, if you could also just show us the current amount in the repair reserve. I know we get it, but to share it with this committee. Thank you.
Repair reserve. Okay. All right, Mr. Messina, you want to just look at the priority 1 and 2 items? Is that what you would like to do, or are you be scrolling quickly through this document to just give people a flavor, or do you want to go a little slower? What's your? It's 8:36.
I guess if you want to just scroll through it slowly and let people read, and if you got questions, ask away. These are just very broad stroke identified areas without much detail. A lot of this needs to get further into the weeds. We need to do more investigation on some of these as well, to see what it is to answer questions intelligently. But it gives you a good flavor of what the line items are.
Okay, so at this point, does anyone have any questions on this document? This is a reference document, and you can go home and scroll through it and figure out what you think is a high priority item that will have the most value within the purview of, we're concentrating on priority 1 and 2 if we can. All right, so I want to skip back to one thing that I think I overlooked, and that is that there was an item 6 back on the agenda, and that was grade level reconfiguration plan. And there was and I just wanted to highlight that there was a request. We talked about whether we needed to move people or students from grade level to grade level in different facilities. And I think we asked for the beds enrollment numbers for 2023. And could you go and take a look? There's a beds report. I think it's mostly blue and yellow. Let's see. Yeah, yes. So this is another reference document for you if you're interested. So I can see in the upper left-hand corner, all students, we have 1,656 students, pre-K through 12, and I believe that also includes, yeah, it includes ungraded, elementary and ungraded secondary. So that's who's got to fit into the buildings. If you want to know, there are breakdowns on ethnicity and by grade level, and because we're on the Princeton plan, certain grade levels go with certain schools. So you pretty much have all the information from the district for the current enrollment there. That's a snapshot. There's another document I very briefly pulled out, previous year's enrollment. So let's see if we can find, it's a very short, very small document. Let's see. District-wide beds.
District-wide beds and day enrollment?
District-wide beds day enrollment, yeah. Just for the last 10 years, if you wanna look, that's right, there's the point, 2019-20, where pre-K half-day enrollment was discontinued, so we only have full-day ECP now. So you can see that we kind of flattened out. We're just about tied with last year. There's our 1656 on the top. Last year was 1655. We came down from the 1712. You get into the time of COVID, and then we started to rebound from that. And the 1640 was the low point, and then we came up to 1655, which was significant. And we said, that's almost like another classroom worth of kids. And if this keeps up, we'll get crowded. So I'm looking and saying, okay, it's leveling off at this point. So maybe there's not quite as much push. I don't know. How do you feel,
Right
Dr.
now,
Robertson?
I agree.
There's not quite as much push for, we're bursting at the seams everywhere. There may be local things we may want to double a little more and say, is Leif Jackson still crowded? And take a look at that. But that's also a risk for the mill. I wanted you to have that. Okay, good. Back to item 10. Okay.
Mr. Warner, I'd like to ask a question about the beds report, please. I noticed that it says that there is only one economically disadvantaged student in the district. I'm wondering how we arrived at that figure.
Economically disadvantaged, total pre-K UG, right there, you see it?
Yeah.
Star economically disadvantaged. And that is a question for the administration.
That's a great question. I'm glad you saw that.
That's a very interesting, I would be very surprised if that's, so let's.
How do you define that? What's the definition of that?
There's
Economically.
a around that, and it's a lot of different data points that go into it. I'm wondering. That's usually the data is collected from the lunch forms that are submitted.
And is that because I thought we qualified with 40% of our students being, or 40% or above, being correct?
We need to check into that. I've been asking, that doesn't look right.
Well, it's not possible if we have Head Start families.
That's not.
By the definition of economically disadvantaged.
One, only good catch. All right. Okay.
Trustee Bellman, that's.
And 2 American Indian, that's not.
Chris.
No, I'm glad. It sounds like our administrators will look into it, but I also want to, I think was it Jessica that just said that we did not request free and reduced lunch forms this year because we did direct certification to get free lunches for all of our students. That may impact this, but you're right. There's got to be something off because there should be more. Yeah, thank you for looking at it, but that might be one of the reasons why.
This is gonna impact your state accountability because they're gonna be looking at those subgroups. So this is
Right.
with BOCES, if you contract out to BOCES to be doing your data reports and sending your data to the state, it's figuring out what happened with that data transfer. Or are all student indicators accurate? So someone has to go into the state portal and look at it.
Right, and I think when we did the certification for the free lunch program, Ms. Raymond, I know that there was advice given on how to make sure we were reporting, what reporting mechanisms there were to make sure we, for this data point for use and other things like Jessica's alluding to. So I don't remember what those other guidance was.
Will this affect
It
state
also
funding?
says only 2 students with disabilities on it.
I just circled this, I don't know, we have to look at this. This is my first time.
We
Okay.
have classrooms of students identified with disabilities.
Two students with this, well, we just need to
Yes.
check into it.
Yes, there is
I haven't
something
seen
that
this
needs to be
before,
updated on
yeah.
this form, okay.
And I guess this was as the October bad state, but this is not accurate. So we need to talk to David Lees who generated this to see where this data came from.
Very good. All right, so.
We should have checked this before.
Yeah, this is all wrong. You look at the homeless, the migrant.
We will take a look at
This
this.
is alarming, but it's not accurate. So we will.
Okay, so then the question is, all right,
So we'll have that in the next meeting, because this does impact funding, especially where this is.
Dr. Allen, thank you for asking about that.
You're very welcome.
all right, so at this point, let's go back to the agenda and item 10. I'm just gonna go over this. I don't expect any response from anybody this time, but be thinking about your response for next time. We'll put it up front at the next meeting. So phase 2 is well on its way. We need to shepherd it on through. We have several other projects that we are pushing to completion. But the main thing we do in terms of steering the boat is what's next, what's in phase 3. So the questions I want you to be thinking about for next time: what projects should we include in phase 3? When should phase 3 begin? Should we go as quickly as possible? Should we wait until we've completed some other things before we get there to establish our credibility? Or should we, go forward now? How much risk are we willing to accept? So if you put out a bond and it fails, are you okay with that? Or is that a tremendous disaster and we want to avoid that at almost all costs? You have to determine where you are on that. And we'll come back next time and we'll talk about all of that. I laid out some options from previous meetings. We have in the past talked about using a combination of a capital reserve and a bond to add an additional ECP classrooms to Lee F. Jackson. And I believe the last time we looked at it, that was in 2021. One of the backup documents here was that the last update of that estimate. You can go look at that. Of course, it's not 2021 anymore, so we'll have to possibly update the numbers again, whatever we do, but it'll give you a ballpark. Fixing ventilation in the administration building, that's what we would need to do in order to get the administration building. We now have an administration building with a nice roof on it, okay? And if we fix the ventilation and bring it up to the same standards we did for all of our schools, then we can at least move the administrators out of the basement of Woodlands and take care of that. That's a possibility, but you have to weigh the relative importance of that versus doing something else. And then the third possibility is upgrading and repairing a combination of priority 1 and 2 items that we were just looking at were originally from the BCS and are actually in our 5-year plan now, and popular request items. So if the soccer team wants to have an upgrade in there, and you think that that's a desirable thing, as well as the priority 1 and 2 items, what sort of mix would you want? So those are kind of 3 categories or ways of going at it. So I expect that we'll come back and we'll poll the committee members and see what you think and what direction we should take going forward. And then we'll update our numbers and get better estimates from BBS in terms of the exact costs of what we think are the most popular options, and we'll decide among them. So that's the process as I see it. Any questions or concerns? You want to change the, okay. Then we have one last thing before we adjourn, and that is the Edgemont Incorporation issue. And I'm going to turn it over to Carol Allen. I know that, the Village Incorporation will have could have a significant financial impact on the tax base and make things more difficult for us in various ways. And the district has responded to that in various ways in pushing for legislative reform. Would you like to update on us on the latest on how those efforts are going, Carol?
Thank you. There's not a whole lot new since the last time we spoke last month in terms of what's going on with the governor's office. Of interest, all of you probably received an email blast from Paul Feiner yesterday, which contained a link to a position paper that was written by a think tank called Empire Center, which gave an excellent discussion of incorporation issues and summation of the two bills that are before the legislature awaiting forwarding to the governor. I am hoping that that paper will be brought to her attention to provoke her to try and move faster in getting the bills signed and modified as we have requested. For anyone that doesn't know, the bill by Senator Stuart Cousins, S-7537, has a section in it that specifically exempts the incorporation effort by Edgemont, even though everyone else in the entire state would be subject to the new provisions of the law. So we believe that is very unfair and it needs to be removed. We did have an additional educational meeting at Anthony Veterans Park last month, which was well received. We are planning to have an additional meeting next week. It will be in person for residents of High Point's condominiums, and it will be available by Zoom for the entire community, as we have done with previous meetings. We definitely need more contacts within the Edgemont community. So I would ask that anyone that has friends, families, associates, or business contacts within that community to speak with them, to forward their contact information to our coalition so that we can try and get more people in Edgemont involved so that they will be aware of the problems and the negative impact that it will have on them as well as on us. And that's all for now.
Thank you, Carol. Are there any questions? Very good. I'm really optimistic, and I feel like we're really moving forward. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned. Hey. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thanks. Good night.